84% of entrepreneurs report imposter syndrome, and here's what nobody tells you about it. The more successful you get, the worse it gets. Each win raises the height of the fall. So if you've been waiting for the next achievement to finally make you feel legitimate, I have bad news. That's not how this works. Give me 20 minutes, probably even less than that, realistically 10 minutes, and I will show you what imposter syndrome actually is, why the achievement makes it worse instead of better, and the specific work that resolves it. This is not affirmations. This is not about pretend you feel confident. By the end of this video, you will understand the real mechanism underneath the feeling and the technique that interrupts it at the source. Imposter syndrome is usually described as feeling like a fraud who's about to be found out. That description is accurate, but it actually misses the deeper mechanism, which is why most advice that I've seen about it actually fails. The feeling isn't actually about competence. You can have overwhelming evidence of your competence and still feel like a fraud. The feeling is about a belief that runs underneath the surface in a place that the evidence can't touch. You'd assume that achievement would cure imposter syndrome. When you build enough proof, you win enough times, surely the feeling fades, but it actually works in reverse. Each success raises the stakes. Now you have more to lose, more people watching, a higher position to fall from. The voice doesn't say, look, all this proof you're clearly capable. It says you got away with it again and one day you won't. A salesperson that I worked with once described it perfectly. As a top performer, they were always suffering from anxiety about being able to maintain their position. The success didn't resolve the anxiety, it became the new thing the anxiety attached itself to. And this is the trap that keeps high performers chasing. They believe the next achievement will finally make them feel legitimate, so they keep forcing themselves to achieve, and every achievement feeds the machine that generates the feeling. Imposter syndrome usually, not always, traces back to a childhood pattern. Love was conditional on performance. Somewhere early on, you learned that your worth depended on what you produced. Good grades, approval. Achievements, attention. Being impressive, you finally earn your place. So your nervous system fused those two things together, your worth and your output. And now every situation where you might fail isn't just a performance risk, it is an existential threat. If you fail, the conditional love that you want so badly gets revoked. And underneath that is the terror that you were never actually worthy to begin with. The inner critic running this is what IFS therapy calls a hyperactive manager. It is developed in childhood to prevent rejection by catching every flaw before someone else could. It is meant to protect you. The problem is it never stopped. Now it runs 24 hours a day, scanning for evidence that you're about to be exposed. You cannot argue with it using the successes on your resume. It is not operating on evidence. It is operating on a belief that was installed before you had any say in the matter. This is why I am confident, I am capable, I am worthy, repeated in the mirror doesn't do anything. You're applying a level 1 intervention to a level 3 problem. If you don't know what those mean, go watch my video on the 3 levels of choice. The belief lives at the identity level. The affirmation operates at the surface level. They never touch each other. In fact, oftentimes the affirmation makes it worse because your mind hears I am worthy and immediately responds, no you're not, and here's the evidence. You just started an argument with yourself that unfortunately you will lose. Here's the work that actually interrupts it. When the imposter feeling fires, when the voice says you don't belong here, you're going to be found out, you use 2 words. Says who? The first answer is the hard one. Says who? I do. Remember now, in this moment, I am the one speaking to myself. Not my old boss, not my dad, not the colleague that terrifies me. I am the current voice of this belief. Now, that is uncomfortable because it removes the comfort of feeling like a victim of an objective truth about yourself, but it's also the doorway, because if you're the one speaking it, you are the one who can stop it. Next, trace the source. Whose voice is this originally? Most of the time it does go back to a very specific person or a very specific period. A parent who only ever noticed your achievements, or a teacher who said that you were never going to amount to anything, or a culture that measures you by an output or a profession or grades or whatever, right? The belief that feels like an objective fact turns out to be an internalized opinion from someone who probably isn't even in the rooms you're in anymore. Then evaluate their authority. Does that source deserve to be running your internal narrative right now? Did they have the experience and the expertise to judge your worth where you are now? Were they even talking about you specifically, or were they expressing their own limitations? Most internal critics fail this evaluation, oftentimes really badly, because their origin is outdated information or a limited perspective, or even worse, someone else's beliefs about themselves. And then finally, this is the key part. Choose. Having seen that you're the current voice, traced it back to its source, and then evaluated whether it actually deserves the authority you're giving it, you can consciously decide whether to keep amplifying it. you can revoke the authority that you unconsciously handed over years ago. When this lands, you will feel it in your body. There is a moment of recognition. It's almost like waking up. It is the belief that feels like solid ground all those years. It is actually just a voice that you've been carrying from someone that never really should have had that much power over your life in the first place. And I've watched people like break down and cry when this happens, not from sadness, but because they're now relieved, right? They've spent decades in a cell with an unlocked door, and they've realized that they can walk out at any point. They were performing for an audience that was never going to give them what they were actually looking for. The reason I can say you fix this forever is that the fix isn't a feeling, it is a recognition that becomes permanent once you've seen it. Once you understand that imposter syndrome is a belief about conditional worth that was installed in your childhood, that was sustained by your own voice, and then pointed at by an inner critic that is so out of date, well, you just stop treating it as the truth. Yeah, the feeling might come back, but it doesn't have any authority anymore because you have revoked it. The achievement was never going to fix it because the achievement was never the problem to solve. The problem was a belief that your worth depended on achievement. And the moment that you separate your worth from your output, the whole thing collapses. You were never an imposter. You were a child who learned that love had to be earned. You were running a program that you never chose in a room with a door that was open the whole time. The Says Who technique that I just walked through an abridged version of deserves its own deep dive, and I've made one. Watch my video called Says Who for the full 4-stage breakdown with examples and situations on where it works and where it doesn't. This is the tool that interrupts imposter syndrome at the source.